Good afternoon. My name is Jose Garza, and I'm running to be your district attorney. The last few weeks, we've all been settling into a new normal and trying to find silver linings. I've been grateful to spend more time with my family and to have a lot more time to play with my kids. But I also can't help but think about the fact that there are so many people right now struggling without jobs, struggling without health care if they get sick. There are so many people who are in need right now in our community. And that's why taking care of our community is more important now, now more than ever. And immigrant families are a crucial part of our family here in Travis County. For immigrant families in our community, COVID-19 has brought a new level of uncertainty and fear. The shuttering of large segments of our economy has made it more difficult for all families to meet their basic needs and care for their loved ones. Immigrant families have also been left out of much of the assistance made available to other members of our community. So today I'm really grateful to partner with my good friends, Stephanie Garakanian and Vicky from Workers Defense, and with Daniel Garcia from the Garcia Law firm. And Jose will also be joining us from Workers Defense, and excited to have him on as well. And today we want to raise awareness about the unique challenges that immigrant families face in Travis County, and make sure that you know that there are things that you can and should do to help. So I want to start by welcoming Vicky and Jose, who's going to be translating for her. Vicky, it's a real pleasure to have you visit with us today. Vicky is a member leader at Workers Defense and a mother and a business owner, and there is no doubt in my mind that Travis County is a much better place because of the work that she and her family have done over the last decade to improve our community. So Vicky, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you are facing, that Workers Defense members are facing, that members of our community are facing right now. I know this must be an incredibly difficult time.
José.
José, ¿vas a traducir?
Sí. Bueno. Vicky,
I can go a little slower too if you want me to get sort of the main question.
Okay, no, yeah, I mean, I was just trying to her going in, but we can definitely do that. Yeah, no, I can. I mean, I think that was good. Sorry, I was expecting her to kind of jump in, but I can definitely just go ahead.
Yeah, and the question that what we would love to hear, Vicky, give us a little bit of a sense of is how she is doing, how her family's doing, how other Workers Defense members are doing. How is our community doing in this really challenging time? What are some of the challenges that that they're facing?
Sí, bueno, lo que me estaba mencionando José es que, bueno, muchas gracias por participar en esto, pero queríamos oír un poco sobre su historia, un poco sobre qué está experienciando ahorita, cuáles son los problemas, cuál es su historia durante estos tiempos.
Gracias, José Garza, por invitarnos a los miembros para participar. Voy a hablar un poco despacio para mi traducción. ¿Está bien, José?
Sí, muy bien. And then, so she's just saying,
mi nombre es Virginia Vadillo y yo soy miembro del proyecto ya hace un tiempo.
Her name is Virginia, and she's been a member of the project Workers Defense for a while now.
La pregunta es, ¿cómo es que estamos viviendo en este tiempo con esta pandemia? Pues muchos miembros estamos sufriendo mucho porque estamos siendo la población más afectada en muchos aspectos.
what she's saying is right now for the members, there's been a lot of suffering for a lot of, as we've seen, a lot of the members that we do have been the ones that have been most affected kind of during this pandemic and during this time.
Porque sabemos que la comunidad inmigrante es la comunidad más desprotegida en los Estados Unidos y además porque nuestro presidente ya nos dijo que nosotros no tenemos beneficios, no calificamos para ningún beneficio de ayuda del gobierno federal.
She's saying, as we've seen in the past, the immigrant community has been the one that has been, again, less protected. We've seen our president tell us that we don't have any benefits and that there has been no benefit presented to us during these times.
Nuestras familias estamos en el último escalón de esta cadena, entonces somos las personas que estamos sufriendo más con respecto a la economía, a la salud física, a la salud económica y moral.
And then, so as you know, these types of families are kind of in the first response. So they're the ones that are suffering the most in regards to health, in regards to physical health, in regards to emotional health, and in regards to financial health.
And Vicky, where do Workers Defense members feel like they can turn right now in this really scary time?
Vicky, en estos tiempos difíciles, ¿dónde creen que los miembros del proyecto pueden tener ayuda o a dónde pueden buscar ayuda?
Pues muchos están buscando la ayuda de lo que se está ofreciendo por parte de la ciudad con respecto a comida, por ejemplo, en los bancos de comida o en las escuelas que están dando comida. Ahí es donde están agarrando ellos un poco de comida, estamos agarrando ahí, están tratando tal vez de escuchar un poco las noticias para ver de qué forma se puede solucionar sus necesidades más básicas, y eso es hasta ahorita lo que yo sé, porque no hay más cosas en las que se pueda recibir ayuda.
She's saying that a lot of the members are looking into what the city can do and what the city has provided, looking into things such as food banks and kind of the way schools that have also been giving out food. A lot of members are watching the news to see how their basic necessities can be met. But I think a lot of members are seeing that there is just not a lot during this time.
Well, Vicky, I'm incredibly grateful for your leadership and really grateful for you taking a few minutes to share with people what is really happening right now and the real challenges that our community is facing. And in a little bit, we're going to talk about some of the ways that people can help. We will remind people that we all have power and agency in this moment, and it's up to all of us to use it. So I'm really grateful for you joining us today.
Sí, Vicky, y muchas gracias por todo su liderazgo que ha tenido nuestra comunidad. Muchas gracias por su tiempo de hablar un poco sobre su historia con nosotros, para compartir eso. Y que ahorita vamos a hablar un poco sobre las diferentes cosas que podemos hacer para ayudar y para tener esos recursos.
So we're also joined today by Daniel Garcia, and Daniel is the son of former migrant farm workers and has spent his entire career fighting for people as a criminal defense and immigration lawyer. And Daniel, as we've just heard, this is an incredibly difficult time for the immigrant families here in Travis County. And even before COVID-19, before this pandemic, we have spent the last year talking about our broken systems here in Travis County, about our broken criminal justice system, and so many of the changes that we can and should make. And even before the outbreak of this virus, we know that our criminal justice system weighs more heavily on immigrant families. We know that in this difficult time, our criminal justice system may be making things worse. And so I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about some of the ways that immigrant families face collateral consequences under our current system that sometimes weigh more heavily on those families.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks for having me on, Jose, and for reaching out. And yeah, definitely collateral consequences are one of many things that we have to deal with, particularly in this space, right? In this crimmigration space that we call it. And so what are collateral consequences, right? To put it short, basically, when somebody is being punished for a crime or is being offered some sort of a deal to take, a plea, there's a big difference, for the most part, between somebody who's undocumented taking the same punishment as somebody who isn't, right? And so the collateral consequence in that, in many situations, there is deportation, is family separation, right? You look at two people, one US citizen, one undocumented person, both committed the exact same crime, offered the exact same punishment, right? The results totally different, right? One person will complete, let's say, terms of probation and get to move on with their lives. Another person is probably going to be deported. We're going to have a separated family, a totally ruined family, and we don't know where it goes from there, right? Like, we usually don't find out what happens to that person after something like that happens, right? And I mean, I guess I could give you, would you like an example of that?
Yeah, that would be great.
So one small example that I can give you that we deal with a lot are situations like dismissals, right? A very common practice here in Travis County is to dismiss a case with a note that says, pending further investigation, right? Okay, that's great. The case has been dismissed. If the individual has a nice hold and is moved to Pearsall or any of the other immigration detention centers and tries to ask for a bond, right? An immigration bond, he's eligible for it in every other sense of the word. He's been here for, the right amount of time, no criminal history. Obviously, his case got dismissed. The judge will still look at the PC affidavit. He'll still look at the details of the case, and he'll see that dismissal. When they see something like pending further investigation, it tends to put the idea in their head that maybe this guy actually is guilty of this crime. And remember, all they're seeing is the police report, none of the other evidence, right? And more recently, anyway, I'm sorry, I'm getting my thoughts confused here. One of our clients was deported with no criminal history, with no criminal record, with a dismissal, because it said that. When we approached the prosecutor to put down in the interest of justice, or just nothing at all on the dismissal form, they wouldn't do it. And that led to a guy with, like I said again, no criminal record to be deported, right? Because the judge thinks that they might still be investigating him. It's a completely unfair system, and these collateral consequences happen not just in this, limited example that I just gave you, but all over the place. And I mean, we could go on all day, but just, I guess ideally, what some of the lawyers that I'm talking to are concerned about is having somebody who's willing to listen to us and not just say, oh, well, I'm not going to give this guy a break because he's undocumented. We're not asking for a break. We're asking for someone to look at the case holistically, and look at these collateral consequences for what they really are.
Daniel, thank you so much for helping us understand how these collateral consequences can work in practice, and how they may be making things more difficult, especially during this already difficult time. We have talked, by the way, I'm being joined by a special guest in the background, my daughter, Sophia. But we have talked a lot about the fact that during this crisis, during this pandemic, it has brought to light, the way our broken criminal justice system is really putting people in danger, and particularly some of our most vulnerable communities, including immigrant families. We have called on our local elected officials to stop arrests of misdemeanor offenses and state jail felonies, low-level felonies. We've called on them to release people who are sitting in jail simply because they can't afford to pay bail. Stephanie, I know that at Workers Defense, you are thinking of the broad range of changes that we need in our policies right now to really make sure that working families, that immigrant families have what they need to meet their basic needs, to make sure that no one is left out of the recovery that will come. Can you tell us a little bit about the changes that you would like to see made, whether they be economic policy, health and safety policy, criminal justice policy? Tell us how we can better protect working families and immigrant families right now.
Sure. Thanks for having us on. So at Workers Defense, we are currently working to advance a policy platform in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And like you've mentioned already on this call, really what we're seeing is that this is a time in which injustices that were always sort of at the surface are really becoming exacerbated. And so as we think about this work at Workers Defense, we're really thinking about it on 4 different fronts, and I'll hit all of them now. And I should say Workers Defense is a membership-based organization. We have offices here in Austin, in Dallas, and in Houston. And we advocate for workers' rights, for immigrants' rights, and for criminal justice reforms. And so starting at the criminal justice reform piece, this is a moment in which we know that people who find themselves caught in our criminal legal system now, apart from all the injustices that were there already, are at increased risk of infection. And this is because social distancing is a very difficult reality to achieve when one is incarcerated. And when we're talking about whether it's immigration detention or other forms of detention in the criminal justice context, we also know that in many places, just the adequate medical care facilities, et cetera, are not there to really meet the very serious health risks of and consequences of this crisis. And so as an initial matter, really figuring out what are the different levers that can be pulled in a variety of different spaces to decrease the number of people that are held in our jails, in our prisons, in our detention centers right now. We are cognizant that immigrants are particularly at risk at this time because of Senate Bill 4, which passed back in 2017, which mandates compliance with ICE holds in Texas jails. This is something that Daniel mentioned briefly, but essentially, if you are someone who is an immigrant who finds themselves under arrest, and you have an ICE hold placed on you, that means that even if you're able to pay bail, you cannot. You are held in detention, transferred to ICE detention from a county jail when your county case concludes, and so you are essentially trapped in a space where you are at heightened risk to contract COVID-19 right now, away from your family, without access to maybe some of the medical resources or medical treatment that you would have outside. And so this is of particular concern to us right now in the criminal justice context. We also, at Workers Defense, are really concerned about how we protect our democracy at this time. Workers Defense Action Fund has joined a lawsuit that is being litigated by the Texas Civil Rights Project and the American Civil Liberties Union right now to advocate for Texans to be able to access a mail-in ballot right now. We are very concerned about how elections can proceed in July or beyond safely in a time of social distancing. And so that is a lawsuit that Workers Defense Action Fund has joined to advocate for this to be a moment in which we are expanding access to mail-in ballots beyond the folks who currently qualify to be able to vote in that manner. Other two priorities for us right now are making sure that people who continue to work are equipped to be able to stay safe on the job. Many people are out of work right now, but there are sectors of the workforce that are still working that have been deemed essential workers. And we want to make sure that people who are considered essential workers are deemed essential enough to get essential safety protections right now. We at Workers Defense particularly focus on the construction industry and health and safety within the construction industry. This is an industry in Texas that is majority immigrant. We estimate that about 50% of Texas's construction workforce is undocumented. And so many undocumented workers continue to labor right now, and their safety at this time is paramount. You might remember that in the city of Austin, at least, we had some initial stay-at-home orders from our mayor. Those orders were superseded by the executive order that was later released by Governor Abbott. Our local authorities had drastically limited construction, and construction was opened up again as a result of the executive orders that were issued by our governor. And so one priority of ours has been advocating for local authorities to make sure that we are issuing guidelines that ensure the health and safety of workers on construction sites right now. So ensure that there is social distancing on those sites, that there's hand washing facilities on those sites, that there are procedures to make sure that, for instance, like tools are disinfected so that they're not shared between workers, that people have access to the appropriate PPE, personal protective equipment, etc. New guidelines were released by the mayor yesterday, but we want to make sure that those guidelines are actually enforced and that workers have the protections that they need to be able to assert their rights to those safety protection measures on their work sites. And one of the things I just want to mention is that the city of Austin did actually commission a study from the University of Texas in response to the governor's order to evaluate what the impact of his order would be on construction workers in our community specifically. And what that study found was that if construction continues at 100% without any mitigation measures being taken in the Austin Round Rock area, we would see triple the number of COVID-19 hospitalizations by mid-August, and 8 times the number of construction workers who are hospitalized with COVID-19. So truly, if construction is continuing without mitigation measures in place, the consequences that construction can have on our public health system locally, let alone the lives of construction workers who in good times already don't have sufficient access to health insurance or other social safety nets, is huge. And so one thing that people can do who are listening is, if you happen to drive by a construction site and you see that people don't have appropriate PPE on, that they're not wearing face coverings, if you see that people seem to be not maintaining that recommended social distance of 6 feet, we are really encouraging the public to liberally report those instances to 311. You can call 311. You can just share the address of the work site. And I should say that we really want those calls to come in. We want people to take these guidelines seriously. And we are also doing a lot of community education around those guidelines right now. And we want workers to understand that while we want them to feel safe to assert their rights to these protections at work, it is not them that would be held liable if those violations are called in, but their employers. And so that is something that we are really encouraging the broader public to do. The last thing I'll mention that's really been a priority for us right now hits a lot on what Vicky said earlier on in this conversation, really making sure that people are able to meet their basic needs right now. Immigrant families in this country are cut out of a lot of the public benefit systems that exist by design. This is a consequence of some pretty awful federal legislation that passed in the 1990s. And so even though you have many immigrants who have been paying into the unemployment system for years, as they've lost their jobs, they actually aren't eligible to apply for unemployment insurance right now. Many immigrants are not eligible to access funds that have been approved as part of the COVID-3 federal stimulus package that passed at the end of March. And so like Vicky mentioned, many workers who have really been kind of the backbone of our local economy for a while, who find themselves out of work right now, like so many other Texans, just are without access to a lot of this other safety nets that other folks who have status are able to access right now. And so at Workers Defense, we have been asking ourselves, how can we help fill this gap? We were part of the advocacy for a $15 million RISE fund that the city of Austin passed last Thursday. One thing that people listening can do is they can also continue to advocate for immigrant families to be included in what we expect to be additional federal stimulus dollars that might be approved when Congress goes back into session in a few weeks. So there's potential there to really advocate for the inclusion of immigrant families in subsequent federal stimulus legislation. And we have really determined that we need to think about how we as a community can just take care of each other, and so have relaunched an emergency fund to benefit immigrant workers who are shut out of the federal stimulus bills that have passed Congress. And so we have launched the Texas UndocuWorker Emergency Fund. This is a fund that Workers Defense houses. It is intended to benefit again, folks who are cut out of the federal stimulus package, who live in the Metro Austin, the Metro DFW, and the Metro Houston areas. We opened up applications for assistance from this fund at the beginning of the month, and the initial application window actually closed over the weekend on April 12th. We have a goal of providing $250 grants to as many families as we can. And we've already received over 4,000 applications for assistance from this fund. We've raised a little over $38,000, so certainly not nearly enough to meet the need. And so really do encourage people who are able to donate, who want to support their neighbors who are shut out of other forms of government assistance right now, to make a donation to the Texas UndocuWorker Emergency Fund.
And Stephanie, please forgive me. I didn't give you your proper due as an introduction. Stephanie is the special counsel at Workers Defense, and she's just an incredible advocate, as you can see for yourself, for working families and immigrant families here all across the state. She's also an elected trustee at ACC, and she serves our community in so many ways. And so I want to just make sure I've got this right. We know that we know how important immigrant families are to our community, not just here in Travis County, but across the state. You just said, over 50% of our workforce in the construction industry is undocumented, and that doesn't even account for the important role that immigrants play in other sectors of our economy. And at the same time, we know that so many of our legal systems weigh really heavily on immigrant families. Daniel explained to us, and you explained to us, particularly in this moment, that getting caught in our criminal legal system can be a death sentence for immigrant families. We've talked about the ways and the steps that we can take to mitigate that. And even though, the work that immigrant families do has been deemed essential, We know that our economy wouldn't make it without them. They are cut out of so many of the resources that are being made available right now as we go through this crisis. And so I'm just really grateful for the work that you have done, that Workers Defense has done. Incredibly grateful to Vicky. And so I guess two things. One, we're going to make a $250 contribution today to make sure that we can support at least one stipend for one family. And I really encourage anyone who sees this video to do the same, to ask their friends if they are able to do the same and pitch in. We really all have a responsibility right now to stick up for everyone in our community. But tell us a little bit, Steph, how the funds get distributed. I know Workers Defense is a member-based organization. Who decides who's eligible for these grants?
Thank you, Jose, and thank you for making that donation. So the fund is a mutual aid fund in the truest sense of the word, meaning that it is a fund that is administered by immigrant families for immigrant families. So in each of the 3 cities where Workers Defense has an office, we have a fund committee that is composed of member leaders from that city. And that fund committee in each city will actually be meeting this week to review all of the applications that have come through from families in their geographic area to decide how those funds, like who essentially is eligible to receive assistance or not. Ideally, we would like to be able to help as many people as possible. Our members are some of the most generous and open-hearted people that I know. And so truly the biggest challenge that we often face is just how to make hard decisions when we know that the need is so great.
Absolutely. Can we let's see if we can put the screen back up to make sure that everyone can see the website where you can make a contribution. And again, I'm really incredibly grateful to Vicky and to Stephanie and to Jose and to Daniel for partnering to have this really important conversation. We all have a responsibility right now to stop the spread of this virus, and that means sheltering in place whenever we can and proactively doing our part to support the most vulnerable in our community, including and especially immigrant families. We know that immigrant families are crucial to our economy and make our community more vibrant. And caring for the most vulnerable in our community right now is not only the right thing to do, but it will keep us all more safe. Thank you all for joining. My name is Jose Garza, and I'm just incredibly grateful for all the work that you do every day. And just really grateful that you took some time to help raise this issue and let people know that they can help in this moment. So thank you very much for being with us today.
Thanks, Jose.